Hello, welcome to the No Más Secrets Podcast. My name is Fiorella. I'm a survivor of CSA, and this space was created to break generational silence, normalize hard conversations, and remind survivors that they're not alone. Before we start today's episode, I do want to give a trigger warning. We will be discussing CSA, grooming, manipulation, and trauma-related experiences. Please take care of your heart and your nervous system. If you need to pause, skip this episode, or come back later, that is completely okay. Your safety comes first. I also want to say this. Everything shared on this podcast reflects personal experiences, perspectives, and alleged events. Nothing discussed here is intended to state verified facts about any individual. This podcast is for awareness, education, and survivor storytelling purposes only. I am not a psychologist, therapist, or medical professional. I am simply a survivor using my voice. This is no therapy, legal advice, or medical advice. It's a conversation meant to reduce stigma and bring darkness into the light. If you are in crisis or need professional help, please reach out to a licensed provider or local authorities in your area. With that being said, let's begin. Hi, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of the No Más Secrets Podcast. I'm here with a special guest. Her name is Janin, and the way that we connected was through TikTok. I'm so glad about TikTok because I've met so many survivors with that same spark of wanting to change the view of the world on CSA survivors and how we're portrayed and just bringing awareness of how much this is happening. So thank you so much, Janin, for being here on the podcast today. I appreciate so much you taking your time to share your story and bringing awareness to this topic that is so taboo, but we need to be talking about it. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about you so the listeners can get to know you a little bit before we start into the deeper questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So my full name is actually Janin Giselle Ramirez. So it's a very long name. So you can tell I am Hispanic, I am Latino. I am originally from Honduras. San Pedro Sula, Honduras is where I come from. I was brought to the U.S. as an 8-year-old girl. So I remember very little from there. Very little. I
How old
remember
were
some
you?
of the food and eight.
Eight. Oh, so you were only 8. Wow. Okay. So this is your home now.
Yeah.
The U.S. is your home. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, it's actually a very interesting story on how we got up here. I was brought here as an 8-year-old little girl. I actually grew up in South Dakota. So I grew up there with a bunch of white people. There's not a lot of Latino people up there. So I got the American way of living. So I would consider myself an American. But I'm not ashamed to tell people, yeah, I'm Honduran, but I don't have that much of a connection besides just being
Yeah.
born there and remembering what I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you're American, 100%. If
But
you live
yeah,
here so long, yeah, this is your home. And that's one thing that we can really debate because this is what you've known really your whole, pretty much, yeah, most of your
yep,
life. So
yeah,
where are you now? You said you were in Houston. Is that right?
yep,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
yeah. So I moved here back in 2018. So I've been living here for the past, I would say, 5 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
yep.
that's awesome. And if you have, you can share your social media account if you want everyone to follow you and follow your journey.
Yeah, so my TikTok is at I am Lioness77. And that is the same for my Instagram. You can find me at I am Lioness77. And if you're wondering where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where does the lioness come from? Well, the lioness is a protector, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those who are survivors of CSA, there's actually two things can happen with us. Number one is we can either become like one of them. There is that possibility, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
or we just become protectors.
Yeah.
Basically, we just want to bring awareness to this, which is what you and I are doing,
Mhm.
and the lioness, any mom lioness, like you said, you mentioned you had your daughter. We don't want this to happen to the next generation.
No.
Right. So that's why it's so important for us to talk about this. And that's where that lioness comes from. That's where that brand comes from.
I love that. I love that passion and how you have like channeled that lioness into your life now. And I'm sure that helped a lot with your healing journey and finding purpose. That's just exactly how I feel too. When I'm speaking out. We definitely want to make a change in the world. Even if it's just one person that listens to us and sees that commitment that we have to trying to change it, I feel like that will be enough. And yeah, it's a slow progress, but we're here trying to make that change. So you've said you remember what happened clearly to you. We talked a little bit before this interview, and you knew that it was CSA at the time. Is that correct? Because that's one thing that I want to explore, because so many kids go through it. Like in my case, I was going through it and I had no idea what was going on. But you had like that feeling in your gut that something was wrong. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So just a little backstory on how this guy got into our lives. So like I mentioned, me and my mom, we came here right from Honduras, and we ended up in South Dakota. My mom ended up meeting this guy. Literally, he just inserted himself into our lives. My mom, I believe, met him at a church. And this is where I'm gonna elaborate more. These people are hiding everywhere.
Yes.
And I really want to stress that to any parent that's watching, is that these people are everywhere, and some of them do such a great job at blending in. You just can't pinpoint them out, but they're there, and it's just about you being aware, paying attention. So I do want to stress that point out. My mom met this guy, right? So I do not know how it all went down, how the relationship started, but let's just keep it long story short. My mom ended up getting married because she thought that the marriage would give her legalization. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's just put it that way. And I just want to say, this is not to talk bad about my mom. I love my mom to death, but I am going to keep things real and how they
Yeah.
did happen. And I believe this thing happens in a lot of our community. And that's why I'm bringing it up and I'm calling it out. I do want to say that I am not bashing my mom for anything, but I am going to keep it real. She ended up getting married. This man just all of a sudden started living with us. And right from the beginning, I did not have a good vibe about him. And I couldn't do anything about it. And it was just one of those things that it was just like, okay, this is your stepfather now. I was like,
Mhm.
okay. Anyways, this guy actually had a history of saying children. And I actually found out about this so much later on after everything took place. I did not know what was happening. When he started doing the things he was doing, he started showing me comic books of like little children of like Batman and the Joker, but they were very explicit images with the privates hanging out. And then that slowly progressed to the porn. And then from the porn, that went on to him actually doing things. But at the time, I just didn't understand because my mom never had a chat with me about what that was. I had no idea what all this was. He would ask me, like, do you understand what's happening? I said, I don't know if so he
Yeah.
proceeded to educate me in a way,
I'm gonna
you
pause
know,
it right there
about,
real quick, just because I want to emphasize what you just said is so important, because that's grooming. That's how it starts. People don't know. People think that the abuse just starts like it's abuse and that's it. No, it starts slowly. How you said, building it up with the comic books, earning your trust, showing you stuff that it's inappropriate. That's how it starts. And I want just what you said about the churches and everything you just said, exactly the same. They are like wolf dressed as sheep. They are disguised in the communities as this perfect image, this perfect person, men or women, because we know there's predators that are women as well. And they portray themselves like they're just really kind. They're usually very religious and really good with children. And that's why parents, this I always emphasize, you cannot trust anyone whatsoever. So he
yeah,
was,
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the little comic books progressed to the porn, and then from the porn it went to the actual acts. Now, I do want to say, as far as like the grooming part, one of the thing that he would do is he would always like get me like these gifts, and one thing I've always wanted was like a little Nintendo, like like a Game Boy. My mom, she just didn't have the money to buy it because my mom, I have three other siblings back home. So she was worried more about them, I would say, because they're still her babies.
Yeah.
So that kind of put me in a vulnerable place. She was just so focused on making money, sending money back home. So that put me, you could say it was like the perfect environment for him to do whatever he needed to do. And he gained my trust by, he would buy me things. And, in a way, I kind of felt like a prostitute because, whenever he would do the acts, he'd always like leave money. And even though I had no
Oh,
concept of money, whenever I would comply and he would leave like $50, $20. And when you're a kid, you don't understand that. You don't have a grid for what money. For you, that seems like a lot of money. Oh, I can get candy, I can get that. But like I said, I had no conversation about, no one sat me down and say, hey, this is an area no one's allowed to touch. This is inappropriate. This is
mhm.
wrong. But like I said, some people say they have a icky feeling in their stomach. I always had that icky feeling whenever
Yeah,
he was doing whatever he was doing.
me too.
It is, whenever he was doing whatever he was doing, I just froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't
Yeah,
know
you're
what to do.
just a
What do you
child.
do as a child?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think your mom knew what was going on, or was she not realizing whatsoever? Was he like trying to keep it quiet, like telling you this is a secret, or like how was that dynamic in the family?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, I think she did suspect something was going on, but I think for most people, they don't want to go there. They don't want to.
Face that.
But now that you mentioned with my mom, I think she probably suspected something was going on, but I think she knew that I was being serious when I told her what was going on.
Oh,
And
okay.
and
So you did speak up. That
but
that's a big step.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. How did
yeah,
she
yeah.
react when you told her? Did you receive any kind of support?
Well, so this went probably on for about 2 years. Now, it was the year of 2009. It was like the day before Christmas. A lot of people were off. They might give them some time off work. A lot of the abuse that happened was in the early hours in the morning for me because my mom would go to work early, like she'd have leave by 4:30. But then he would stay there with me. And a lot of times he'd drop me off late at school because he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. But that gap right there, that was the gap that a lot of it happened in. But anyways, let me fast forward to when I did speak up and I told my mom. A lot of times, unfortunately, I was in the room that didn't have a lock in it. And he would just come in and out whenever he wanted to. But this particular time was different. It was December of 2009, literally the 24th, the day before Christmas. And I woke up with duct tape on my mouth, and this guy was literally almost half naked. And that he had never done that before. But let me tell you, that scared me so much. The fact that I had something over my mouth, I
Absolutely.
wasn't tied up, but it was so frightening for me that
That's horrible.
I did not move from my bed all day. I stayed in my bed until my mom got, because he had left to go to work and he had left like a $20 bill on the counter. He would always leave money. So my mom looked at me and she saw, I was just frozen. And she's like, honey, what's the matter? She's like, what's wrong? And, like I said, that guy, and I kept the duct tape. I kept it and I told her he put this on my mouth. I said, and then she's like, what do you mean? And, at the beginning, she was like, oh, he's just trying to be like a dad to you. He's just trying to be gentle. I said, no, this is different. I said, no, you don't understand what I'm trying to tell you. Until I started bawling my eyes out. And I said, Mom, this guy has been, he's been touching me with the area I've been used to. I didn't have the language. I didn't have, my PP
Yeah.
area, and I had no language to express it. And then when she realized, oh my God, this is a serious thing, what ended up happening is she waited for him to get home. She had a chat with him. She ended up kicking him out, but police were not called. 2 weeks passed, and then my mom was like, oh, and he's going to come back. He just wants you to forgive him. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm like, what do you mean he's got to come back? And that scared me so much that I spoke up to somebody at school and they got police involved. And that's how that happened.
Oh, that's good. You find a safe person and you felt you had that support because otherwise he probably would have still. Did he get in trouble for that?
I found this actually out much later too, when I read police reports much later, is that he actually had been sometimes outside of the schools, there'll be these, people giving out like these little orange Bibles. And
Mm-hmm.
he would actually go out to the schools. He was trying to give kids candy and try to get him in his van to obviously, do whatever he wanted to do with them. I didn't know this until I read the police reports and people were reporting there's this man. And I was just, of course I was furious when I found that out. Like I had no idea this guy was trying to get other kids. But it's just one of those things that it did shock me when I read police reports.
That's so important because this is one thing survivors usually think they're the only ones. Predators usually have multiple victims. They just don't abuse one person or one child. They do it multiple times to different children. They don't speak up is because they think it's just me. But by you speaking up, you might be saving someone's lives. That's what I want to emphasize on that you just never know if someone else is going through it and they just don't have support whatsoever. And you speaking out might save someone else. So
Yep.
he got in. Did he get a lot of time in jail after he got caught and all of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
He did? Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. They gave him 15 years. He got a lot of time. But, like for me personally, just from hearing other stories, like these people usually they don't stop.
no, they don't stop
And
whatsoever.
it's one of those things that, you know, I'm not ready for it yet, but I am going to go find this man eventually. And I am going to, not to beat him up. Trust me, man, as much as I've wanted to, I've probably killed him in my head so many times. It's not so much about the closure. It's just, basically it's an act of forgiveness. And I know this can be a hard thing
Oh.
to talk about, hard thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I have forgiven this man fully in my heart. I have no hatred for him, even though I did. And trust me, I wanted my revenge. And when I mean I wanted my revenge, you know, like the thoughts that would go through my head, I was ashamed that those things went on about my head because I would, because I was so angry. And it's just one of those things that I've overcome all that. And I'm so glad that there's the gym available. The gym helped me release some of that tension and some of that
Yeah,
anger, you know.
I can relate. Yeah, for sure.
So that was one way that, yeah, absolutely. But, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Undaunted. It's a story about, his name is Josh McDowell, on how he was essayed by somebody in the family. And many years ago, after he grew up, he ended up forgiving this man. He actually went to go find him and he forgave him in person. But he also went to him with a warning. And he said, if I ever find out that you ever touch one of these little kids again, you're going to regret it. And it's not so much of a revenge thing. It's just one of those things, not to excuse what that other person did, but I don't know what happened in this guy's life. I don't know anything about his childhood. I don't know what he went through. I just know from my interaction with him is that he was like 23 or 24 and I was like 11 or 12, but he didn't act like an adult. He acted more like a teenage boy, like a 15-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have that much. Of course he was an adult, but he just didn't act like he was an adult.
I see what you mean. So he had like his own trauma, and that's so right because that's usually the case. Many PDF files were abused at some point in their life, and that's how, not excusing it, of course, there's no excuse whatsoever to, because you are deliberately causing harm into a child. So that's different. But I see where you're coming from, and you bringing that forgiveness in your heart, it's for yourself and only that, because carrying hatred only harms yourself.
Right.
And I can understand where you're coming from whatsoever. I haven't got to a point where I could say what you're saying because you're so strong. You're honestly to want to see him and get, tell him, I forgive you. I admire that a lot from you. You're so strong just by saying that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it takes a long time to to really, and one thing I want to point out, but that experience, it really changed my perspective about men in general. I could not look at a man and think he was good because I associated the genitalia with the male because they all have it, right? So in my mind, they're all bad. They're all evil. They all want to SA me, you know. But when you look at it from that point of view, it makes sense why I would think that, you know. It
Yeah.
makes sense why I would make that connection. But, it some time of me seeing good, respectful men to understand, hey, they're not all like that. You know, you just got to pick out the ones that are bad. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're everywhere. you know,
Yes, especially with how many men are raised, it's really hard to. I mean, there is good men, absolutely. I gotta say that, but there's a lot of bad men too, as well.
and it's something that we can't, just look over is just one of those things that, like the way I like to put it to people is that you could be going to work and maybe you have a coworker who's a janitor, who's the cashier, or you could be a manager and they could be doing this stuff and you just don't know about it. And they could be just the nicest people you've ever met. And you would just never think this guy's doing this to a child on his
Yeah.
off time. And it's just one of those things that the ones that really get me are the ones that, for example, are like the pastors, of course, your coaches, the people who are in leadership. Those are the
Yeah.
ones that I would say are the ones that are probably a little bit more hard to pick out because, they just blend right into society.
Or the priests, or even the teachers. There's many teachers that are pedophiles. There's just so many. They seek out jobs or hobbies that have to be around children, and that they give them like an authority over them. And that's one thing that I keep telling and telling and telling parents: don't just trust anyone, even if it's a teacher, a coach, a pastor. You
Yep.
never know people's true
Yep.
intentions. And they're just so blended in. And even doctors, I've seen so many cases of doctors as well. Don't just trust anyone because, oh, they have a doctor degree, or they are a dentist or a lawyer. No, that doesn't mean anything. People are bad, doesn't matter what title they hold.
Right. Right. One of those other things that I also want to point out is that for me personally, I feel like there's no better place for a pedophile than for him to see a single mom with 4 kids and who works maybe 2 jobs because he knows. And I want to stress this so much because I see it happen a lot. I just want to say that it is important for women. You need to surround yourselves with good women, like good sisters. Good women, you can say, hey, I got an appointment. Can you watch my kiddos? You need that sisterhood around you. So surround yourself with good women that you can trust, And the thing is, but to a sexual pedophile, they will not touch a home where there is a man, a father involved. They will not do it, you know. But when there's a single mom, there's a child, and she's working multiple jobs or she has multiple kids. For him, that is, and I can't stress how that is perfect ground for them because they will always look for a gap. Anytime the mom is either busy, and I want to stress the fact that it does not take very long for them to essay your child.
Mm-mm.
It can happen in 5 minutes.
Yes.
And I just want to stress that so much. And I
Yeah.
think you agree with me on this,
100%.
is
Yeah.
that they are so good at looking for their prey, and there is nothing that is more pleasing for them in their eyes than to see a single mom who works multiple jobs and maybe
That
she's
it's
got 2 to 3
vulnerable.
kids.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's just one of those things. Like I said, it just happens way too many times. And I see this too in like the Latino community where,
Mhm.
you'll have a young lady who comes or a mom who comes maybe with 2, 3 kids and she'll go work at maybe like a place like Amazon in a manufacturing place. And there's these guys she'll meet at this job, right? and, you know, they'll try to insert themselves into your lives. Well, you find out people think, oh, he's a good guy and all. But then later on, you find out, you know what? He was essaying his little 2-year old girl and their 4-year old girl. And I've seen it happen so many times. I've heard of it happen so many times.
Me too.
And it's just one of those things that I feel like it needs to be called out. Specifically
Absolutely.
in our community, it needs to be called out. You need to be careful with the kind of men you allow to come into your life. Don't just allow anybody to come into your life.
I agree. As a mother, it's really hard. And I'm privileged. Like, I have my husband's support, and obviously my situation is different. But I've seen so many single mothers just bringing anyone in their home with their children.
Yes.
And I'm not one to judge whatsoever. Motherhood, it's already so hard, so we don't need more people judging. But you need to pay attention who you bring. I'm just honestly, even if you pay attention, you never know people's true colors. Just don't bring any men or even women in your home without really getting to know them. And that's what you just said
Yeah.
about how single mothers are just the perfect prey. Like, that's what they're looking for. The predators, single moms are like gold for them because they're already so
Yes.
vulnerable. There's no
Yep.
support whatsoever in this
Yep.
community. Like where we live now,
It-
single moms are just, we're already unsupported. And I'm not single mom, but I already feel unsupported in so many aspects of my life because mother, it's so hard. It's a really alone path. Like, you're alone in so many other ways. So I can imagine as a single mom, you already have no support and you have all of the load of motherhood besides your own things. It's
Yeah.
a lot, and it's like the perfect combination for a predator. It's like the perfect one. So I love that you bring that topic because it's not talked about enough. And I've seen many cases as well, like how you said, like, oh, the boyfriend did it, it's just not talked about enough. There's a lot of shame into the mothers as well because they're like carrying the guilt. How did I bring someone like this into their home? But I do feel as moms, you also have to warn because those kind of guys are going to go and seek out other moms to do the exact same thing to another child.
And I think that most women will agree. Like, if, for example, let's say if I found out that there was a man, let's say he was interested in me, and if I found out he had a criminal record of seeing children, of
Mhm.
course, absolutely no. I think most women would be like, no, I would never, if I found out he was doing that.
So I want to circle back a little bit of how it's been affecting you now that you're an adult, or maybe not right now at this point in your life, but when you realize like, oh, what I went through was really heavy. Like, did anything change for you in the way that you saw yourself, your relationships, or your mental health?
For the longest time, and this was earlier, after he got tried and all this went on, I had a hard time. Sleeping was a problem for me. And it wasn't so much about going to sleep, it was the fact of waking up.
Mm.
That was my biggest fear. Is even though I knew he was locked up, right? In my head, I still locked the door. I kept the knife under my bed for the longest time. And keep in mind, he's already locked up. But it's just one of those things that it's not that I was scared of going to bed. I was scared of waking up to somebody on top of me doing things.
Mhm.
That's what I was scared about. And I would just fight. I would fight. I'm like, if I can just stay awake, then I'm ready to defend myself.
Yeah.
So I struggled a lot with just sleeping became a problem for me.
Mhm.
Sleeping became a problem. And then, of course, you got to deal with low self-esteem. You don't see yourself as valuable. But basically, when I realized I needed to work on myself and take some time, because I knew I was broken. I knew what he did to me was a horrible thing that I had to deal with because I was so angry. I used to walk around always defenseless. Like, I have a trust issue with people, and specifically with men. It's caused a lot of trust issues because in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, are you one of these pedophiles?
Yeah.
Because when you have an experience like that, that's the first thing you want to decipher is what does this person want from me? Luckily, I've had a good group of community around me and I've been able to deal with that. Like I said, going to the gym and working out, getting my anger out in a healthy way has really helped me. At a gym I used to go, they had a punching bag and I would go there and when I would just get in this like really mad phase, I'm like, I need to go punch something. So I'd go there and I'd punch a punching bag. And I had a young man, an older man approach me and, he's like, you really, you're going at it. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah. And if you don't get the hell away from me, the next bag is going to be you. I didn't say that to him, but I was just like, he had no idea what was going on in my mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome that you
It's
channeled
just one
that.
of those things that you have to find a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to find a healthy way to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean like what helped me got like what in the world helped me see this man in a different eyes. I just want to point out that as much of the revenge as I wanted, I want to stress this to any person, any survivor of SA. Please choose forgiveness. It takes a lot of work to get there for you not to see this person for what they did to you, but you have to get to a point where you have to understand. You don't understand the backstory of this individual, and it doesn't excuse him whatsoever, but it does help in giving you a little bit of compassion for them, and it does help you get to that point where you do forgive and you do start to become open to that. And he got released actually not too long ago, and looking at his mugshot was hard because that, for me, like, this is my monster. And when your child is telling you there's a monster literally in my bed, for some of us, that is true. There is a monster. But I'm not angry anymore. I've completely healed. But like I said, I do plan to go visit him because I know he is free and I know he is still alive and I don't want him targeting children. But, of course, I'm going to have a group of men with me when I do it, but I have to prepare myself for it because it is going to be a hard thing for me to do. But I do
Yeah.
believe that I'm not saying that all of us who survive SA need to go and we need to go and personally forgive our abuser. No. But for me personally, I feel like this is something that's been tugging at my heart and it's something that I'm getting ready to do. But
Yeah, it's part of your healing journey.
that's right. That's right. And it's so much better than any revenge you could ever get.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I encourage people to choose forgiveness over any sort of revenge that you could ever get. It is so much better. It is so much more fulfilling. Just the freedom and the peace that you have, you choose forgiveness, it is beyond, indescribable.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I love that you said that because you're so right. Anger only hurts you. It doesn't hurt anyone else. It hurts you and your surroundings. Those emotions are only harming yourself. It's not going to bring anything good and it's not going to change the past. It's just pretty much affecting your present and how you perceive yourself in the world. I love that you said that forgiveness is so important. I think it is the ultimate point to heal. Everyone's healing journey is
Yes.
different, and forgiveness can look different to you, can look different to someone else. It's all about perspective and their own situation and path because we don't know everyone's story. But you're completely right. Thinking about the vengeance and no, that's just gonna harm you. Absolutely. Finding an outlet in a healthy way to channel all those emotions, like you said, the gym, punching that boxing bag, and like that's awesome. Like you found a healthy way to channel all that anger and not take it out on you or someone else, like that's amazing. And I
Yeah.
love that you did that. That's so inspiring. I
Yeah.
truly, truly mean it because not everyone does that. And
I encourage every single person who needs to do any kind of healing, go get yourself in a gym. I'm telling you, it does
yeah.
something to you.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. Actually, that you mentioned the gym, that's what has changed my life as well. I used to have really low self-esteem. I was overweight all of my childhood. Food that was my coping mechanism. I was addicted to food. I was really overweight throughout my teenage years as well. And I just didn't have that love for myself. And yeah, the gym completely, even it doesn't have to be the gym, it can be anything. Moving your body does wonders to the mind in so many ways. Anything you can find to move your body. And yeah, it doesn't have to be the gym. For me, it was the gym. For you, it was the gym. I love the gym. I love lifting weights. But yeah, it can be anything. And yeah, we definitely recommend it. Is there anything that you would like to add? Like, what is one lesson that you would like to all the survivors of the world to know? I like to end up things just in a very inspiring way, even though you just said a lot of things that were very inspiring. So something that you will said, this is the way that this every survivor needs to know this.
Yeah. So I personally believe that we, the survivors of SA, we need to start speaking up for one. We need to start calling these people out. It could be that deal of yours. It could be that stepfather. It could be your own father. And unfortunately, in some cases, but we need to start speaking up and we need to share about, how we were groomed because that's going to help other parents know what to look for. I just believe that we need more of us to start speaking up. I'm not saying that these abusers deserve a second chance because a lot of them, they just don't stop. For example, for me, the fact that he has been released and the fact that he's still out here, not only do I want to warn parents about him, but I want him to know, like, if you ever do this again to another child, I'm going to be at every single one of your trials because I'm not saying that he should be unalived, but we don't need people like him continue to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like it's either he needs to be locked up forever and we need to let them outlive their life and, let God deal with them. But it's just one of those things that we, the survivors of SA, we have to speak up more about this. To the parents, we need to educate our kids. I know we don't want to sexualize kids, and I'm not a parent. And so you can speak more on this, but I can see myself being like you. If I had children, they're coming with me everywhere. I would not leave them with anybody. Like, because you don't want that to happen to, when that happens to a child, to be honest with you, it kind of screws up the next generation.
Yeah.
If you don't heal, like I said, you have the potential of either becoming like one of these pedophiles or you have the potential to become a protector, a lion or a lioness who protects others. And it's just one of those things that I just feel like we need to start speaking more about, especially us, the survivors of CSA. We need to start sharing our stories. And people are starting to do that. But like you said, it's just something that's kind of taboo. But, by us having these kind of conversations, it's bringing awareness to it. And these people are a lot closer than we think. And yes, we need to call out that uncle, that tío, that brother, that whoever it may be doing it. We need to do a better job of teaching our children what appropriate touching, inappropriate touching, and what their privates are. Because I guarantee you, if I would have known a little bit more, I had no idea about anything. I didn't know what these areas were called. So I had no language when it came time for me to try to express myself. I had no way of expressing myself. And even when I was getting interviewed by the police, they asked me, well, do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? And they were just trying to see kind of where I was at. And it's just one of those things that we need to not like scare our children, but we do need to educate them. And your children need to have full trust in you.
Yeah, I agree.
Because one thing abusers will do is they will try to gain the trust of the child, but they will try to get the child to.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that just breaking up the taboo about talking about your body without shame, that's one of the first things. They, of course, they're private parts for a reason, they're private, but we need to call them by their names. That's one thing I do with my daughter, 100%. Like, that's just body anatomy. That's it. Also, consent. I'm very big on consent. Like, you are allowed to say no whenever you don't feel comfortable about any situation. Doesn't have to be just with your body, like I've always said in my videos, like if my daughter doesn't want to be hugged, I don't hug her because she knows what consent is. She knows that she has autonomy over her body, and that's how it starts. And I also want to say, speaking up 100%, what you just said, that's the only way to change it. The system does not care about survivors whatsoever. We've seen it over and over and over again. And if the system is not doing, society is not doing anything, and you see this rise of just crimes of pedophiles doing it on the internet, with the social media, with the pictures, with AI now, what are we going to do? Are we just going to stand back and just be quiet? Something has to change, or this is going to keep happening over and over and over again. So I agree 100% with speaking up, everything you just said. I'm so grateful that you were part of the episode today and open up yourself, sharing your story, and just you're so strong and brave. I admire so much. A lot of the things that you said really got to me. I gotta say the forgiveness part, because that's a part that I'm not like fully on completely. Not saying that I wish bad things to the person that did that to me, because like I've said before, you're just poisoning yourself with those thoughts, with those feelings. But I do think maybe because I haven't seen any justice whatsoever, he's still out living his life with nothing happened. So I do want to see something changing in that way, bringing some accountability for so many things that he did to so many kids. But yeah, I really admire your healing journey and everything you've done to cope. I appreciate so much, Janin. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And you can share your social media handle one more time so people can follow you and follow your journey.
Yeah, you guys can find me on TikTok at IamLinus77. And of course, my Instagram is IamLinus77. But like I said, I am going to be sharing a little bit more about that on TikTok here soon, basically exposing him and just going a little bit deeper into kind of more of what he did to just kind of earn my trust. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I don't want the next generation. That's because SA is something that is very deep and is something that it rewires your brain to think differently, and it takes a lot to have to renew it and reconstruct it. And I just don't think, and mental health is such a big part of that. I don't think that it's talked about enough. And, I'm so grateful to God that he helped me forgive. I'm telling you, I don't know what kind of person I'd be today, but in all things, I encourage you to please choose forgiveness. I encourage every single survivor of SA, start talking about it. Of course, when you're ready. If you're not ready for it, then don't do it. But it's just something that I'm so glad that people like you are talking about, for us to help not only our children grow up healthier and better, but also help our communities to do that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Janin. I appreciate so much you being on the podcast and opening up about yourself. And hopefully you'll be part of the podcast in many more episodes. Thank you so much for being here and holding space for conversations that most people are still afraid to have. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone. That's how we break cycles. That's how we protect the next generation. If you're a survivor, I see you, I believe you, and your story matters. Make sure you follow No Más Secrets Podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And if you feel called to share your story, my DMs are always open. Until next time, we don't keep secrets anymore.